Boone here, and I want to start firing away.
Coach, could you just talk a little bit about what your role is on this stuff? Just kind of explain that to everybody.
Okay, so my primary role is I'm special teams coordinator. So I'll handle all the special teams except the kickoff return. Coach Brewster is an expert kickoff return guy, so we let him handle that. Then defense, I'll coach the outside linebackers, which includes the rush guys and defensive end some.
How do you think the special teams and your outside linebackers group has kind of progressed since you got here and throughout spring?
Well, I think that the special teams have been a big emphasis for us, because we really had no returning specialists. So we're just kind of in search of who we thought could do it. I think that they got a lot of reps and they got a lot of work, and I think they started to sort themselves out as far as who we think at different positions can help us. We didn't do a ton of scheme stuff in the spring because it was mainly just trying to establish depth charts and guys we thought could fit one place or another. So that was kind of the focus of the spring. In terms of the outside linebacker, the overhang players, it was basically a adjustment of them getting to know me and me getting to know them, and how you say things as opposed to how things were said in the past, and how we coach techniques as opposed to how things were done in the past, and how Coach Baby wants them done in his defensive system.
Can you expand the role of that Russian outside linebacker? I'm a little confused. You have a lot of players that were defensive ends that are now listed as linebackers: Chris Collins, Jake Waller, even like guys like they're injured, like Alan Cater and Tamon Fox.
Yeah, that's a really good question, because that's the role that in the position that we have those guys. They're basically the hybrid defensive end, the guy who can rush the passer, the guy who can also be counted on to be in coverage sometimes. We would anticipate that to be more of a high school defensive end type kid we recruit, rather than a outside linebacker from a high school program that's basically an outside line nickel Sam type player. So the guys you mentioned, Chris and Jake and maybe Tyrone Hopper or Cater when they come back, those are bigger bodies that will primarily be rush players with drop responsibilities.
Okay.
Tamon has talked a lot about how he's not playing with a hand on the ground that much this spring. What is a challenge when you get a group of guys that are used to having their hand on the ground, and suddenly they're going to be playing off the snap a lot without their hand on the ground?
I think the biggest thing for us and for Tamon especially was his ability to play with low pad level without putting his hand on the ground. I think at his position, and if you look around college football, when you're playing against teams that are zone read teams, especially, the defensive end is more effective if he doesn't have his hand on the ground, because it's easier for him to see the mesh and to get himself in a proper body position. The days of the 4 down, hand on the ground, attack the line of scrimmage, inside run teams, that's not what you see much anymore. So for Tamon to be able to be on his feet allows him to use his lateral quickness more effectively against bigger offensive linemen. So he's adjusted to it, but the biggest adjustment for all those guys was the ability to play with pad level from a 2-point stance. And so that's something we work on constantly, is making sure that they can play with pad level and still accomplish the goals that we have for them from a position.
How about the adjustment of having previously played more physically on every snap to having snaps where maybe they're not going to be physical at the point of attack because of what they have to read, and their responsibility may change after the ball snapped?
Yeah, I think that's a misconception, to be honest with you. I think that we want our guys to be more physical than they've ever been. Just the defense that we're going to be playing is going to allow those guys, when they're in the run fit, to be more physical because they have less things to worry about. I always thought, when I was a defense coordinator coaching that edge player who had to kind of, play the run and then also be able to play the quarterback, I thought that didn't allow that guy to be physical because he couldn't get caught up being physical and then react to an action. So we're saying, hey, you're not going to have to do both. You're going to either be a run defender, and your response will be very clear. So you can be physical and strike and play with low pads, and then react to anything else that you might see other than what we've put in for that.
So what you're saying is it's actually pre-snap, it's simpler for them. They know what they're going to be doing every snap, essentially.
Yes, that edge player will not be in a situation where we tell him you have to defend this, but also watch out for that. And that's the whole premise behind the zone read offense is putting defenders in tough downs. And that defensive end position was always the position that had the tough down, because he had to squeeze with the offense and make sure he could take the wind back by the running back, but also react to a quarterback if he pulled it. Our guy will be more in line to one or the other, and rather than having to do both on the same snap. That makes sense?
Oh, it does, yeah.
Coach, what do you know about Jay Bateman before you got here, and what are your thoughts of 6 weeks of spring practice with him and what he wants to do with the defense?
I've known Jay for a long time. When I was the head coach at Randolph-Macon, Jay played at Randolph-Macon a couple years before I got there, so he was around. He took a job at Hampton-Sydney, one of my first 1 or 2 years at Randolph-Macon. They were big rivals. I always thought Jay was a really good football coach when he was at Elon, then he went to Ball State. Being from Indiana, we were familiar with what they were doing at Ball State. But really, when he got to Army, I started really keeping track of him because I was out west and we played a couple option teams a year, and I was always call Jay and say, hey, Jay, talk to me about how teams defend the option better. Because when you only see it once a year, that's a real pain. Jay got used to seeing it 3 times a year, so he'd give me some, without giving me the secrets of the option, because those option guys, they all have their their little secrets. But Jay would give me like, hey, have you thought about this? Hey, have you thought about that? And really was impressed with the things that Jay did at Army. I think what he's done at Army was just incredible. And I even went up there twice when I was at Arizona and at Nevada and visited with him at Army just to watch his guys and try to get some things that would help me. So I'm excited to work with him. I think he's a really, really sharp young guy who does a great job game planning and put players in positions to be successful. And his big thing is to look complicated but not be. So
you knew him pretty well before you took the job here. Is that a big reason why you came here? Was it connection to Mac?
I think that's the reason why I'm here is because of Jay.
Okay.
I think Jay wanted somebody that he'd known for a while to be with him. And I think Coach Brown gave him an opportunity to say, hey, this guy's got a chance to help us in 2 areas. And if it hadn't been for Jay, I wouldn't be here for him.
Returner-wise, punt returner, kick returner, can you kind of break down the competition there and some players we should be aware of?
Well, I think the number 1 guy is going to be Daz. Obviously, he's been there before.
For both, or punt return?
Well, we haven't really talked too much about kickoff return, but he's back there on kickoff return along with Antonio. There's some other guys that we looked at. We didn't really do, as I said, we kind of in spring we kind of really focused on punt and punt return, and kickoff return kind of got put into last week just to make sure we knew what we were doing. But Daz did a great job catching punts all year, so we anticipate that will be our number 1 returner in punts, and we're still evaluating the kickoff return position.
We got time for one more, guys?
I guess kicker and punter, those are special teams. What's the competition like there? Unless you might have a more important question. But
It's been fierce. Competition's been fierce. We had 2 kickers, 3 punters, working all spring. We charted every single rep they took, every single kick, whether it was a live kick or whether it was a practice kick. And we have, with the kicking, we have probably 100 kicks for Noah and quite a few for Cooper Graham in the kickoff area. So we're just looking at those and we'll evaluate their progress throughout spring with where they are with the summer, with the guys we have coming in, depending on who that ends up being. So there's going to be a very lively kickoff and punt discussion and competition all the way into fall camp, and we may not know who those 2 guys are until a week before the South Carolina game.
who are the punters, the names that are competing?
Well, I don't know if I can mention the recruits' names or not. But the guys who are signed.
Who's here?
Yeah, the guys who are here. The guys who are here. Mass Pacella. He kind of came out of spring as the leader. So he's one of the guys we're gonna probably take a look at first and compete him with the guys who show up this summer.
All right.
They've signed, you can speak about it.
Yeah.
That's a real.
Yeah, the